There are encounters in life that seem written in another language, as if the soul recognizes them before the mind even understands. Amid the chaos of daily life, between doubts and missed connections, there is a silent force operating beyond logic, the call of the soul's destiny. When two people are linked by a greater purpose, by something that transcends time and space, the universe finds ways to bring together what is destined to grow in harmony. No matter how far apart they are, or how many obstacles arise, the signs appear, the coincidences intensify, and the path reveals itself, even in the shadows. Because when someone is part of your soul's journey, both your inner and outer worlds align to make it clear. If you believe that life conspires in favor of true meetings, comment below. I trust in the soul's timing. Carl Jung, one of the pillars of depth psychology, saw relationships not merely as emotional bonds, but as archetypal encounters that catalyze the process of individuation, the path by which we become whole. According to Jung, the soul has its own movement, unconscious yet profoundly guided. When someone crosses our path in a striking way, it is not mere chance. It may be a manifestation of the collective unconscious, trying to bring forth something essential for our inner growth. Projection is one of the first signs that the other has a symbolic role in our journey. We project onto them what is repressed or unknown within ourselves, both light and shadow. That person awakens intense feelings, deep desires, insecurities and hopes, functioning as a mirror of our psyche. When there is alignment with the soul's path, this relationship becomes a portal for integrating internal opposites, feminine and masculine, instinct and spirit, self and other. Jung also spoke of synchronicity, events connected not by cause and effect but by meaning. When someone's presence coincides with recurring dreams, premonitions, and symbolic happenings, we may be facing a truth emerging from a deeper level of reality. In this sense, if that person is part of the soul's trajectory, the universe leaves no room for doubt. It sends signs, repeats messages, and orchestrates encounters that defy reason. These experiences do not arise to confirm romantic fantasies, but to activate inner awakening, because the true destiny of the soul is not just to find the other, but to discover oneself through the other. There are meetings that do not follow the logic of our conscious desires, but that pass through us like a breath of something ancient, almost mythical. When we meet someone and inexplicably feel we have known them before, even though we have never seen them, we are witnessing what Jung called an archetypal manifestation, an event that activates deep psychic patterns resonating with the soul. This kind of connection cannot be explained solely by chemistry or affection, but by a sense of destiny, of reunion. In those moments, life seems suspended, time slows down, and the heart understands what the mind has yet to decipher. The soul's call reveals itself through these encounters that shake our foundations. They pull us from comfort, from the surface, and thrust us into the unknown within ourselves. They are not necessarily easy or gentle. On the contrary, they can arrive laden with intensity, confusion, and resistance. This happens because the other, when they reflect our own unconscious, forces us to face aspects we have avoided. And at that point, the relationship becomes initiatory, like a rite of passage. It leads us to the center of our being. Carl Jung asserted that meeting the other is often the first step toward meeting the self, the psychic totality that integrates conscious and unconscious. When confronted with a person who evokes deep and contradictory feelings, the soul awakens. And this activation is not accidental. It signals that there is something there to be understood, healed, or integrated. In this sense, the other is not the end, but the means, a symbolic bridge connecting who we are to who we have yet to become. These deep connections reveal their own language, made of shared silence, synchronicities, dreams, and glances that speak louder than words. They are bonds that touch the invisible, the archetypal, that which lies beyond personal history. Often we feel fear in the face of these experiences. It is natural. They demand surrender. And surrendering to the soul is one of the bravest acts one can perform. The person who crosses our path as a soul's calling may not stay, but their passage leaves eternal marks. In other cases, they remain, and the relationship becomes fertile ground for individuation. Nothing will ever be the same again because something within us has awakened. What matters then is not to hold the other back, but to listen to what this encounter came to teach us about who we are and who we are meant to be. The soul speaks through symbols, and the other is sometimes the greatest of them all. When we meet someone who reminds us of something essential, even if we cannot name it, we are being invited to follow an inner trail. This path sometimes requires us to step back, and other times urges us to stay. But the most important thing is that it brings us closer to our essence. Jung said that what we do not face within ourselves, we end up meeting outside as destiny. And if that destiny comes in the form of a profound relationship that shakes our structures, then it is not mere chance. It is a calling. When we heed this call, we stop seeking in the other what is missing in us, and begin to see the other as a revelation of what still needs to be awakened. The true encounter of the soul is not only with the other, but with what the other awakens in us. And if the universe is doing everything to make that presence clear, perhaps it is because this encounter carries within it a much greater purpose, to make us who we truly are. Every deep relationship is, above all, a mirror. The person to whom we feel intensely drawn often embodies traits we cannot recognize in ourselves, be they light or shadow. Carl Jung warned that in love, we do not see the other as they are, but as we are. The phenomenon of projection is central in analytical psychology, and particularly evident in romantic relationships. To project is to transfer unrecognized aspects of our psyche onto the other. It is as if we use that person's presence as a canvas on which we unconsciously project parts of ourselves that are either repressed or idealized. That is why often, when we meet someone and feel a sweeping connection, we are not simply witnessing chemistry between two people, but the activation of unconscious contents. The other becomes the bearer of our most secret desires, our deepest insecurities, and what we have yet to have the courage to integrate. When we say the person completes us, what we often mean is that they return to us parts of ourselves that were forgotten or denied. The shadow, in Jung's view, is everything we repress or fail to recognize in ourselves. It may consist of rejected qualities, hidden fears, or neglected potentials. In relationships, this shadow is frequently projected onto the partner. We criticize in them what we avoid in ourselves or place them on a pedestal, attributing virtues we wish to develop but have not yet claimed. Thus, relationships marked by intense passion are often accompanied by equally intense conflicts. The more shadow we project, the greater the chance of dissonance, since we are not dealing with the other as they are, but with the psychic image we have placed upon them. These projections are inevitable, but they also represent opportunities. When we manage to recognize that what bothers or enchants us in the other says more about us than about them, we take a step toward individuation. Instead of demanding that the other fit our expectations, we begin to explore what this relationship is revealing about our inner world. In this way, the partner becomes a living mirror of our psyche, reflecting what we need to see, embrace, and transform. In love, the encounter with the shadow is unavoidable, and this is precisely why meaningful relationships, those that are part of the soul's path, are not always smooth. They confront us. They force us to move beyond idealization and face reality, both in the other and in ourselves. And this, far from being an obstacle, is the greatest gift a relationship can offer, because only by confronting the shadow can we integrate it, becoming more whole. Projection also occurs with the luminous aspects of our psyche. When we deeply admire someone or feel that they awaken dormant qualities within us, we are seeing in the other what we wish to manifest in ourselves. This explains why certain people inspire and uplift us. They do not merely possess these qualities, they show us that we too can develop them. Thus, love becomes an impetus for inner growth. Jung asserted that the cure for projection is not rejecting the other, but recognizing what belongs to us in the image we have constructed of them. To love consciously is to accept that, behind enchantment or discomfort, there is an invitation to self-knowledge. It is to perceive that the other is not there to complete us, but to mirror us, and through that to transform us. Relationships that are part of the soul's journey possess this transformative power. They strip us of illusions and invite us to the truth. And truth in love is always twofold. It reveals who the other is, and also who we are in relation to them. When we face this mirror with courage, love ceases to be an escape from loneliness and becomes a path to integration. Because in the end, to love someone is also to love the parts of ourselves that they awaken, even those we cannot yet name. There are moments in life when everything seems to align almost magically. A sudden thought of someone you haven't seen in years, followed by an unexpected meeting. A recurring dream that foreshadows a real situation. A book falling off the shelf, opening to exactly the page that answers the doubt you've been carrying for days. To Carl Jung, this is not mere coincidence. It is synchronicity, a profound concept describing simultaneous events, connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. And in relationships, this symbolic language of the unconscious becomes even more evident. When someone is deeply connected to our inner path, the signs intensify. It is as if the universe conspires not to make things easier, but to clarify them. That person's presence manifests not only physically, but in dreams, in songs that play by chance, in random conversations that reveal specific messages. Every detail carries symbolic weight, a kind of soul code. Jung saw these events as manifestations of the collective unconscious, a psychic field shared by all humanity, where archetypes and universal meanings dwell. The encounter with someone who seems part of the soul's destiny is often marked by these meaningful coincidences. It is neither superstition nor magical thinking, but a subtler listening to reality. When we are open to life's symbolic dimension, we perceive that the unconscious communicates not only through dreams or slips, but also through synchronicity. And these signs remind us that an hidden order operates beyond what is visible. Sometimes the first contact with that person occurs in a dream. Other times, they appear at a moment of deep transition, as if sent to catalyze inevitable changes. The synchronization between internal state and external events is so precise that it rarely goes unnoticed. When this happens repeatedly, we face not mere coincidence, but revelation. The unconscious is trying to say something, and when the other appears as an answer to that message, it is because they have a role to fulfill in our psyche's narrative. Synchronicity, in this sense, does not confirm romantic fantasies, but awakens consciousness. It serves as a bridge between the inner and outer worlds, offering direction when reason fails. Upon recognizing these signs, we should not interpret them as guarantees that the person will be the one, but rather as indications that this encounter holds essential lessons and transformations. The focus is not the future of the relationship, but the present experience. The most transformative relationships in our lives almost always arrive wrapped in synchronicities. They pull us out of autopilot, compel us to stop, reflect, and feel. Something within us recognizes the meaning behind what seems random, and that recognition does not come from the rational mind, but from a deeper layer of being, where archetypes and symbols reside. To see the other through this symbolic lens is to understand that they are not there merely as an individual, but as a living message of the unconscious. It is crucial, however, not to fall into the trap of using synchronicity to confirm personal desires. The signs do not exist to reinforce the ego's wants, but to expand consciousness. If this person appears in our life surrounded by symbols, it is not because they must complete us, but because something in us needs to be revealed, understood, and integrated through them. Jung said that the unconscious manifests not only to compensate for what consciousness lacks, but also to lead it toward what it cannot yet see. When someone appears in our path with such symbolic intensity, we must ask, what is this presence activating in me? What part of myself is being called into the light? Recognizing the signs of the unconscious is an act of humility and listening. It is admitting that there is a greater intelligence at work in our lives, an intelligence that pushes us toward encounters that serve our growth, not just our pleasure. When synchronicity repeats, it is not insistence of fate, but insistence of the soul, because perhaps in that insistent presence lies the key to something essential. When a connection is true, deep, and touched by the soul, it does not come merely to fill a void or satisfy a need. It arrives as a journey, a crossing toward one's own wholeness. Jung saw the most intense relationships as symbolic territories where the individuation process intensifies. And this is because the other, when aligned with our inner destiny, is not there to complete us, but to confront us with what remains unintegrated. Soul relationships are not necessarily easy or harmonious all the time. They are encounters that activate forgotten, wounded, or dormant parts of the psyche. When someone resonates deeply with us, it indicates a shared field of energy that challenges, transforms, and expands. The ego's tendency is to seek security, predictability, and control. But the soul's call is different. It seeks integration. It seeks the union of opposites, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. In such relationships, deep mirroring is not uncommon. We feel that the other sees in us something no one else can. And for that very reason, they frighten us. They reveal what we hide, poke old wounds, and challenge truths we held as absolute. Yet at the same time, they awaken strengths we did not know we possessed. They call forth our most authentic essence. It is as though we are being seen for the first time, and that, as beautiful as it may be, can also be unsettling. Jung believed that the soul's journey inevitably includes integrating internal opposites. And when a relationship is lived consciously, it becomes the ideal setting for that integration. The other becomes a symbol of our animus or anima, the inner figures of masculine and feminine that inhabit each of us. When we fall in love with someone who represents these inner forces, we are in reality trying to reunite with a lost part of ourselves. Therefore, this type of relationship demands emotional maturity and psychic courage. It calls us to grow, to mature, and to leave behind childish illusions about love. Soul encounters are not about happy endings, but about genuine processes. They are relationships that function as living laboratories, where the limits of affection, surrender, ego, and transformation are tested. Every conflict faced with consciousness becomes raw material for growth. Every moment of vulnerability is an opportunity to expand the soul. It is common when experiencing this type of relationship to sense that we have known each other before, as if there were a prior story, an ancient shared memory. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious as the place where all human stories converge. Perhaps these encounters bring archetypal pacts to the surface, unconscious agreements that resonate beyond time. This does not mean we should cling to the idea of romantic destiny, but rather acknowledge that there are connections that transcend logic and touch the sacred. Pain is also part of these relationships, because in the process of integration, we inevitably confront wounded, fragmented, and rejected parts. To truly love someone requires facing the soul's wounds, ours and the others. But it is precisely through this deep plunge that the relationship transforms into a path of healing. And not just any healing, but one that comes through the mirror, through acceptance, through mutual surrender to what is deepest within us. Soul relationships do not demand perfection, but presence. They do not require control, but awareness. They call us to live authentically, to let love break us and remake us, to expose us and rebuild us. And in that process, we discover that true integration is not fusion with the other, but unification of our own internal parts, which the other only helped us to see. That is why, when a relationship is part of the soul's path, it asserts itself with force, albeit silently. The universe may not shout, but it whispers insistently, and everything around seems to conspire for that connection to be lived, understood, and felt deeply. Because ultimately, it is not just about loving the other, but about loving oneself through the other, about recognizing that the true purpose of such an encounter is to make us whole. Some connections demand no explanations. They arrive, whether silent or intense, and transform everything. When someone is part of our soul's trajectory, life does not allow that presence to go unnoticed. Signs emerge, dreams speak, encounters repeat, and something within us recognizes them before reason comprehends. Carl Jung taught us that the true purpose of a profound encounter is not to fill a void, but to activate an inner process. In that sense, the other becomes a teacher, not by instructing with words, but by revealing through presence. Relationships that touch the soul are mirrors leading us to transformation. They do not guarantee perfect endings, but they offer genuine beginnings. And if you feel that the universe has been speaking to you through someone, perhaps it is time to listen with your heart. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with anyone who needs to hear it. And now, watch the video on your screen. It may be the next piece of your awakening journey. Remember, when the soul calls, the universe responds.